We would favour retail and logistics in the German market. I think offices is an area that's more recently started. The dynamics have started to shift slightly, which I'll come back to in a minute. Yes, logistics is probably our favoured pick for Germany, and I think that's as much around. It's a market where there has been, and I think will continue to be, a structural change in the network of logistics within Europe. So whereas, when you think about the run-up to the peak previously, huge amounts of economic growth was occurring in southern Europe or in the French side of Europe, if you were looking at it from that perspective. And that naturally explained a sort of very strong flow through from northern France down towards Italy and then Spain. As everyone knows, the banana, as it was, of the logistics network has now sort of turned to the right as you look at Europe now and heading towards Germany and on to Central Europe. And that is, we shouldn't forget, partly because Germany remains the industrial powerhouse of Europe, and so it's inevitable that logistics provision is going to be key there. It's a market that's had some sort of corporate and structural reform, and I think that will continue. There'll be greater outsourcing of logistics provision in that market. And so we very much expect logistics in Germany to be an area of some growth going forward, and that's why we favour it. It also benefits clearly from the growth coming from Central Europe, albeit I think that might be a bit of a sort of circular argument, because it's the growth of Central Europe being driven by the German economy anyway on an outsourced basis. But in any event, that flow, I think, is going to be a substantial factor in driving that growth. And of course, logistics has generally shown yield spreads of around 200 basis points above, let's say, office, and perhaps more against retail. So if there's a little bit of growth coming into that and you've got those kind of start yields, I think that's very attractive to a number of investors, and we've seen that with some entrants putting a lot of capital into that market. Some of our competitors, we bid on the Lion portfolio, which was the logistics portfolio that was sold or is being sold. We were substantially off the price on that, and I think that goes some way to show the demand. Nonetheless, though, it's still probably 10% of the market overall, something of that order. So it's not a major piece of the investment market, but we like it. Retail, I think, is certainly attractive given the sort of general economy. We just need to get the Germans to spend a bit more money. They don't have to keep hoarding it. To their credit, they're a great nation of savers. To the extent that perhaps begins to change, then I think that's what explains the growth prospects for the retail sector. Maybe just to finish on the office side, which I think is something I see a little bit of a shift at the moment, because even if supply in the German markets is limited as it has been in other markets, one of my questions is whether some of the more recent news flow in the UK around the economic prospects there, I wouldn't say resurgence, but certainly the improvement of the capital markets, which is a big factor for London, obviously, in terms of the financial services industry. It's a question for me whether that might shift the dynamic slightly towards the UK favour. I'm not to be sort of negative on Germany, but I think it's a question, if you're doing a core strategy, where do I think relatively I get a greater return? Do I think London versus some of the German markets, or France? As I said earlier, France for me is definitely at perhaps the lower end of that. Germany is still favourable. I think you then have to look within Germany. The sort of polycentric issue is obviously it gives an interesting aspect to the German market, but equally each of those markets behave very differently and have different different occupier markets, etc. So I think pick and choose, you might well still find there's some attractive opportunities, but I think there's a shift there, which is why, as I say, retail and logistics are probably our favoured picks.